Smith here with the final episode of the Punisher review. It's been a long time coming. I thought I was going to have this all done in a weekend, but like when you're married, you have to wait for people who have the same taste in shows and movies as you. So I actually couldn't finish it until this weekend. But we did. We marathoned the last 6 episodes and just got it all out of the way. So this is the final review for the episode called Memento Mori. Good episode. Really, really good episode. Obviously, there's a lot riding on this because episode 12 was just ridiculous. It opens out, we find out that Madani took Frank to her parents' house, I'm assuming. And, I guess Madani's father, I think, is a doctor or surgeon or someone who practiced medicine at one point in their lives because he fixes Frank up and, he gets him back on his feet. And, David basically sets Frank up with enough money to leave town and to start his life somewhere else where he can be free and does not have to deal with everything that has happened. Madani basically says, like, I don't want to see you again, go. And, hopefully Frank leaves. With David, you see him and his family interacting. There's some tension between him and his wife, but it's resolved. She was just looking for some sex. It's been a while. Sometimes, yep. And it's been a while for David too. Unfortunately, it was a nice scene though. It was sweet. Like honestly, like it was just nice to see that they were still just so in love with each other after this whole year. And it was nice to see David with his family together and all getting along, and just that family dynamic I thought was really well done in this show. Uh, but at the same time, Russo is still at large. We see him in his apartment. He's packing everything up. He gets ready to leave, kills some people who are coming after him, and then blows the place up. And he basically gets in contact with Frank and gives him, you have to meet me to settle this or else. And so Frank and Russo are going to have their showdown finally. David and Madani find out about it. David, can't really do much at this point. He has his family back, and I highly doubt there's much he could do anyway. But Madani does find out, and she does rush off to help. Now, Russo sets this whole thing up at this carnival where Frank used to take his family, and so he's very triggered while he's here. He's seeing all these images of his past. He's very distracted. Russo is very smart the way that he did this. You get some flashbacks of Russo with Frank's family. They looked at Russo as like an uncle, his kids did, and the wife really loved him as a brother, and they all said he was part of their family. We find out that Russo was adopted, so there's a lot of regrets there as well, where he just doesn't feel like he has a family, and so it's even more of a betrayal when Russo does go up against Frank. Now, there's also a scene where Russo gets Curtis, and basically asks if he's been lying to him as well, and how he feels betrayed against Curtis, but at the same time, like, understands that Curtis was doing something that Frank asked him to do, and Frank was trying to protect Russo by keeping it a secret. And, he's not in it to hurt Curtis. He knows that Curtis didn't do anything to intentionally hurt him, and so he's only using Curtis to get to Frank. So back at the carnival, Russo has these two people hostage. He's drawing Frank out so that Frank can't hide and just snipe him and call it a day. And so they have this battle. Both of them get really injured. It's really very cool. Like, just neat to see these two guys fight because they're very much at the top of their game, the both of them. And, they're both really just very, I don't even know how to describe it. Like, it's just really impressive to see them both go at it because they are such powerful guys and they do have the same training, and so they understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. And you do see, that the environment is impacting Frank, and that there's a lot of flashbacks to his family that are impacting him. And at the end of the day, of course, Frank wins. And, you know, Russo at one point gets shot by Madani right in the cheek. It was pretty gross. He like pushed the bullet out with his tongue. It was like, blah. But yeah, but then he shot Madani in the head, so Madani could be dead at that point. We don't know. But you know, this all happens, and Frank gets the upper hand and just basically smashes Russo's face into this glass. And this is basically where Frank creates Jigsaw, creates one of his biggest nemesis. So there's no way that Russo is dying in this episode because we are basically setting up this great villain from Punisher lore. You know, like there's just no way. We know that he's not going to die, especially right after he's been scarred. We don't see the impact of him having to live with these scars because he's so used to being such a pretty boy, and now he's gonna be just covered in these gnarly scars. And this scene where he gives him the scars is just awful. Like, it's gross. And I mean, he just scrapes his face over all this glass, and it, like, you can like hear it and you can almost feel it. Like, it's very uncomfortable, very well done. At the end of the day, everything kind of wraps up. You see the wrap up of, you know, Frank is with Madani at the end of all this, and you know, staying with her even though he knows the cops are coming, he's staying with Madani because of what she's done and what she's sacrificed for him. And so he gets captured. Madani ends up being fine, and her with the head of the CIA and the one person who's her boss or whatever basically say like, thank you for what you've done, Frank. You get out of here. We're giving you this because we don't want to deal with the repercussions of you, in pretty much. And they're just going to let him go back to being Pete instead of Frank. And so, you know, he's basically free to go. And Madani says that she doesn't ever want to deal with him again. So I think we'll find new people for him to mess with in the next season of this show. But, you know, we see all the wrap-ups. We see David, you know, finally coming home to his family. We see Frank, you know, finding his new way after he gets released from prison. And we, at the very end, see what happens to Russo, that he does survive and that he has all this plastic surgery. And, you know, we don't see his face, but it will probably be pretty nasty. If you know him from the comics, Jigsaw is not a very handsome fellow, so that's pretty gnarly. And then at the very end, you see Frank kind of going back and joining one of Curtis's meetings and not just standing in the hallway to listen. And he's actually showing improvement to where he was before. And this is kind of how the show wraps up. You just see him starting to work through what he's been struggling with now that he feels like that part of his mission is over. And this whole season has set up this really great character arc with Frank. And just, you know, from how he's alone to growing these new friends to being betrayed by old friends, but then finding greater depth with people like David, people like Curtis, and also with Karen. And so you're just seeing him kind of learn how to be a hero and not just a guy out for vengeance. And I think that they did a really good job creating this character and helping you understand why he's doing what he's doing, helping understand what his mental state is. And then at the end, you see that he is also understanding this and understanding that he cannot continue doing what he's doing and seeking the help that he needs. So I think they did such a great job with this. It's a great tool to help describe what PTSD is like for someone who doesn't have it. I think that this show did such a great job showing just the realities of people who suffer from extreme anxiety. And overall, this show was just amazing. I mean, the writing in it is fantastic. The characters that they developed are brilliant. I loved the acting. I thought that there weren't very many people in this show that were miscast. I thought that the entire cast just did a fantastic job. And really, I mean, this is probably one of my favorite comic book shows of all time. I mean, it's definitely up there. It's definitely my favorite Marvel show of all time. and they just did an incredible job. This is not a character that everyone is familiar with. This is not a character that everyone loves. This is a very, this is a very contentious character because of who he is and what he represents. And they put him on screen in a way that spoke more than just here's a guy that kills people. I mean, they gave him a reason to do it. They introduced very serious topics, and they did it in a way that was fun and different, and every episode felt connected, but then at the same time its own unique thing. Nothing ever felt like it was getting too old. The pacing in this show was just so good, and everything felt like it was just reacting in ways that were incredibly natural. I just cannot say how much I loved this show. I mean, just so good. I'm probably going to watch it again, and when I have a whole day, I'm just going to watch all of the episodes back to back because it's just fantastic. I loved this show to pieces. So that's my review of the last episode and also my review of the season, and I cannot wait to see what they have in store for us. I know we have some time before the next season because we have to get through Jessica Jones and all these other things, but I'm just I cannot wait for another season of this show. It better be just as good. They have a lot to live up to now. A lot to live up to. And not just this show. All the other Marvel shows on Netflix. You guys have a lot to live up to. I hope you know this. So that's my thoughts on this. Let me know what your thoughts of are on this show. I hope everyone loved it as much as I did. Obviously, not everyone is going to love the subject material as much as I did, but it wasn't so much the subject material as what it represented to me. I think was just very powerful, and the way they wrote this was just genius. So, yeah, let me know. Drop me a comment. And yes, that's my whole review. You can see the entire playlist of all the Punisher reviews right on over here. You can subscribe to my channel right on over there, and you can follow me for more movie, TV reviews, and reactions. And I will see you all in the next video.